Recently, my colleague Pat Ryan had a chance to talk to Scott Kelly before he left for the launch site, and he asked him to compare the preparation required for this one-year mission to that which Kelly went through for his earlier 6-month trip to the space station.
A lot of it's the same. I mean, the systems are the same. A lot of the operations we do on board the space station are very similar. So the training's very similar. Where it differs, because it's twice as long, is one element is I'm flying with twice as many crew members, and I have a different Soyuz commander on the return Soyuz than I do on launch. So we have to do extra training. Being up there with more people, I have to do extra emergency training, so we cover the emergency procedures with all of them. And being there twice as long, there's twice as more science that'll go on while I'm there. So I have, in some ways, there's some more scientific, science payload training.
Scott, you have launched from Baikonur once before. Walk us through what happens to you as you're going to, on launch day, when you're going to get ready to fly again.
Yeah, so launch day, from Kazakhstan, and in some ways it's similar to, launching from Florida and how the launch day is designed. One thing that is different, though, is we don't do the same type of sleep shift. So where we're going to be launching at, 1:40 in the morning Kazakh time, we don't shift our sleep to take that into consideration. We kind of get up at the normal time, and then we'll do kind of take a nap later in the day. I think it's about 8 o'clock at night. We'll have a ceremonial departure from the Cosmonaut Hotel in Baikonur. There's a traditional blessing by the Russian Orthodox priest that you see on almost every launch from there. We get on a bus, and then it's probably about an hour-long bus ride to the building where we get suited up and do our leak checks of our suit. Once we get in the suit and do our leak checks, we get to talk to our families one more time and some friends. And then we get on the bus to go to the launch pad. And, what's interesting about that is I've flown on the Soyuz once before, but if you've never flown on the Soyuz once before, the first time you're in the Soyuz on the launch pad is on launch day. So that's a much different experience.
In this case, your trip to the station is scheduled to last just a couple of hours as opposed to 2 or 3 days. Is that going to be better for you, or would you like to have the extra time to get acclimated?
Well, it's about 6 hours from the time we launched to docking. I prefer. Obviously, I haven't done it yet, but I think I'll prefer the shorter trip than the 48 hours for a number of reasons. I think, even though you're in the suit longer and you're in the seat longer, and that can be somewhat uncomfortable. I think I prefer that to spending 2 days in the Soyuz with little to do. But also the other advantage to it is it provides us with a couple extra days on the space station. And it gives us some extra margin on the back end if we have any kind of problems with the Soyuz and we need to, be in orbit longer. We have, some extra consumables and ability to do that. So there are a lot more pros and cons to doing this flight day one rendezvous and docking.
As you look out a year, what do you think are going to be the highlights of your time on orbit this time?
I think probably the variety of people and crew members that come and go. You look at I've flown in space 3 times. First time was 8 days. Second time was 13 days, and a third time was 159 days. And if I had to compare them to each other on how they're much different lengths of time, but they're all individual experiences, and you cherish those. In many ways the same way, just because my first flight was 8 days and my last flight 159 days, and I had 4 months with Katie and Paulo and my Russian colleagues up there. I don't really look at them being much different. The human experience is something that you really appreciate, and I think that is going to be one of the highlights, but also working on something that's very, very challenging and, working hard at it with a great team, both in space and on the Earth, and then being successful is the other thing I look forward to.
One last question, Scott. by the time you get back to Houston, you'll have been gone from here for well more than a year. That's a lot of sacrifice to make. Tell me why you think the mission you're going to do is worth that.
I think all these missions are worth it. We fly, a lot of people on the space station. We've been doing it for 15 years. There's a lot of sacrifices that go into flying a 6-month flight or even, a shorter duration flight. There's sacrifices of different levels. And if we're ever going to perform space missions beyond low Earth orbit, all of these flights are important, and everyone's contribution is important. And this one is just a little bit different in that it's longer.
Scott, thanks for the talk. Have a safe trip and have a good time on orbit.
My pleasure. Thank you.